Everyday outreach is a lot easier than that. As you can see, we're doing something a little different this morning. We're wrapping up a series of messages that we've entitled Game On, Living the Life You Were Called to Live. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Mark Brunot, the lead pastor at First Free. And this handsome-looking young man next to me is Nat Crawford, who is our pastor of local outreach. And I'm going to be interviewing him today because we want to become the kind of church that really involves itself in local outreach. And that's what we've been talking about throughout this series of everyday outreach. And I think many people out there, and Nat, I really want to begin with this. I think we forget the fact that God wants to use each of us to fulfill his mission. You know, he's given us the mission of introducing people to Christ and developing them into disciples. But I think so many of us think that mission is given to professionals. Right. That mission is given to those who have been to seminary or those who have the title of pastor. And so how would you respond to someone who might be thinking that way, that, you know, everyday outreach, sure, that's for pastors, but right, it can't be for me? What would be your response to that?
Yeah, I think that is a common myth that, it is for the paid professionals, the people who have the advanced seminary degree, and it's false. It is a myth. But there's also another myth that permeates the church, and that is evangelism is only for those with the spiritual gift of evangelism. Even as pastors, I think at times we can almost fall into that myth from time to time, thinking, okay, it's just for that guy or that girl with that spiritual gift, but that's not true. Look at what Paul wrote to Timothy in 2 Timothy 4:5. He said, always be sober-minded, endure suffering, and do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry. You see, Timothy, it appears he didn't have that spiritual gift of evangelism, yet he was still called to do the work of an evangelist. Well, that applies to us here today. We are all called to do the work of an evangelist, to go out and engage in everyday outreach, to meet people where they're at and be disciple-making disciples. But we also have to remember what Jesus said in John 17:18. He said, just as you sent me, so I am sending them into the world. You see, God sent Jesus into the world to seek and save the lost. But then Jesus, he sent his disciples out into the world. Well, that is true for us today. Jesus is sending us as Christians out in the world to engage in everyday outreach, in everyday natural ways for you and for me. Natural ways just like this video.
I got to tell you, Nat, I love so many things about that video, but I want to say two things. First of all, I love the fact that here was a woman thinking strategically about everyday outreach. I mean, you know, even though it was somewhat of a primitive way, you know, with a piece of paper and a crayon, she's looking out her window, drawing pictures of her neighbor's homes, thinking, now who lives there? I don't know that. You know, and I'm going, wow, even that alone impressed me. But the second thing is, I think a lot of times when we think about what Jesus said, that we're to go, I think in our minds we think that we got to go, you know, overseas, and I'm all for that. We got teams in Mexico, and we got a team going to Brazil. But I mean, no, she just went out her front door, and that's impressive to me. But you know, some people might say, you know, hey, I'm not a picnic table kind of person. I don't like turquoise zoning in my house. Or, you know, a picnic table in my front yard wouldn't work. I've got a sloped front yard. You know, how would you respond to some of those kinds of things?
You know, if you don't have the right type of house, move. Just move.
Yeah,
that's probably what I would do. No move. Yeah, and if you do move, call up Pastor Scott or Troy, because they are very handy with tools. They can build you a picnic table, no problem, right? No, don't move. Don't move. God has you right where He wants you, and if He does want you to move, He'll push you out the door. Trust me, it'll happen. I'm reminded of what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5. He said, "We are Christ's ambassadors." we are to represent Christ to the culture, to the world. So I think we can be ambassadors really in three circles of influence, three natural places for you and I on an everyday basis. The first is your neighborhood. It doesn't matter if you own a home, if you rent a home, a duplex, or an apartment complex. It doesn't matter. You have a ministry context where you lay your head at night. A few months back, you had us go through that exercise, writing down the names of our neighbors. And it was a fascinating process because even though you may have been able to write out all 8 neighbors or the people who live in those homes, chances are you may not really know them. I mean, there are people in my neighborhood that I can tell you what their names are and who their kids are, but I really don't know them. So right there you have a ministry context, and you don't have to do the turquoise picnic table. I told Tiff we should try that. She goes, have you seen our lawn? It's straight like this. That's not going to happen. So what can you do? You need to start thinking outside the box. Well, you have a living room. Could you open up your living room to people and have a movie night?
Sure.
Or could you open up your backyard and have a barbecue? I mean, there's so many ways that you can engage in everyday outreach with people in your neighborhood. So that's the first area we can be an ambassador. The second place is the workplace. Many of us here in this room, we work out in the marketplace. And like we said a few weeks ago, you actually have the easier job of doing the work of an evangelist if you work out there. There are people that you encounter on a daily basis. It could be a boss, it could be a coworker, but they're the people you just pass by in the hallways. I mean, the person who works in the cafeteria, the person who comes and empties the trash, the people out smoking outside, those are ministry opportunities, right?
I have found that to be one of the most helpful things at my office. You know, the people outside and my coworkers smoking outside. Just
it's amazing how you find us.
Yes. Now, for those who are guests, that's a joke, okay? Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. No. But just think about the opportunities you have at your workplace. I mean, what if you just invited the coworker and over the afternoon break? You're going for a walk anyway. Why not invite a coworker and engage with them once a week for 15 minutes during that walk? Everyday activity, and now you've got an hour with them in a month to invest in their lives with gospel intentionality. So the workplace has a lot of opportunities. The third place that we can be ambassadors is in a place that we call a third place. Now, it's a term that we really don't utilize a whole lot out there, but we refer to third places as a place like Cheers. Remember the TV show Cheers? Everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
It's the places that you like to go, the places that you like to hang out, that it makes everyone equal, right? It's a neutral ground. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background is. It doesn't matter where you're from. Just everybody is there for a common purpose, a common bond, a common activity. The thing that I think about often is a coffee shop. When I was working on my master's degree, I'd be at the mill maybe Tuesday, Wednesday night, and then again on a Saturday during the day or a Sunday. Well, over that time, I got to know the workers there and the people who were there on the same nights. We were always there on the same time. Well, now on Tuesdays during the day, I actually work from the mill because it is a third place for me. I've established relationships, and I see the same people over and over again. I have opportunity to engage in everyday outreach in those third places, the places where everybody knows your name. There's also the gym. I mean, I don't go to a gym, clearly, but that's a place that some people are able to engage in everyday outreach. Chances are, if you do go to the gym, you're going on the same day at the same time. Same workers, same people to work out with. But what if you engage with them in everyday outreach? It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I have to tell everybody this. It's obvious that I go to the gym every day. And now, one of the places, honestly, that I have found to be very effective is Slim Chickens. It's down the street. This is the absolute truth.
Why do they find that so funny?
I don't know. And I know the people there now because I go there often. And after lunch, it kind of quiets down, and there's not a whole lot of people there. But the people that work there have come to know me. And they'll come over, oh, what are you reading today? Or what are you writing today? And I found that I can study there a lot because I have less disruption there than I do in the office. And that's just something that I found helpful to me. Right. And I've, discovered that, a couple of the guys call me Buddy. Hey, Buddy, what's going on today? And
it's because they can't remember your name.
Yeah. Well, I go to the Catholic Church, and it gives me an opportunity conversation. So
Absolutely.
what you're saying is absolutely true.
Right. Yeah, and what I found fascinating too is some of the third places are the most unexpected places. In fact, watch this video and you'll see what I'm talking about.
You know, I think it's important for us to understand a couple of things about where today's culture is. When you see a video like that, those of us who were raised up in the church almost can cringe, you know. And we have to remember that the days of people coming into the doors of our church without invitation are about gone. We're called to go out. And here was an opportunity for someone to go out in a place where everybody felt comfortable. And 600 people, that's impressive. Second thing I think we need to understand is he went for redemptive purposes.
Absolutely.
And that's really kind of what I'd like for you to pick up on, because I mean, what if somebody is struggling, you know, I mean, not every Christ follower is called, as he said, to go to dark places, you know. What if somebody's struggling or is a recovering alcoholic or maybe struggles with some kind of addictive behavior? How wise is it to go to a third place like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good question and a hard question. I mean, there is no doubt that what Mark said is right, that nowadays people are not coming to churches. The church used to be a third place. Mm-hmm. People would just show up at a church for different events, and those days are largely gone. So we are truly trying to live out the model of being sent out into the world. And if you look at Jesus' life, Jesus went to the dark places. He went to the neighborhoods, to the workplaces, to the third places, where it was dark, where sinners were. He really was a friend of sinners. And so we are called to engage and go to those places where they're at. They're not going to come to here. But I do think you bring up an important point, that if we're going to engage in outreach, it could get messy. And so I think there are two questions that we need to ask ourselves if we're going to engage in outreach. And the first question is, what's your motive? What's your motive in engaging in outreach in a certain place or in a certain activity? I mean, Proverbs says that every way of man is right in his own eyes, but it's God who weighs the heart. Okay? We can engage in outreach, and we can think, and we can pretend it's for the right reasons, but friends, at the end of the day, it may not be truly with the right motive. We may want to engage in outreach in certain places or certain activities simply to be a cultural voyeur. We want to go and see things and experience things that we haven't yet, and this is our excuse, this is our chance. Yeah. That's the wrong motive.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
That's dangerous. Yeah. That's horrible. So in that case, don't do it. Back to the question about, well, what if you're a recovering alcoholic, or what if you struggle with something? Again, what's the motive? And also, I think another question with that is, okay, discernment level, where are you in this struggle? Are you 10 years down the road? Have you been clean and sober for 10 years? Do you have an accountability partner? Are you grounded in Scripture? Are you in communion with God? Are you a mature enough Christian to handle the situations? If not, don't go there. It's not worth the risk. The second question I think we need to ask ourselves when engaging in outreach in the dark places is this. When we're there, when we're engaged in everyday outreach, are we influencing other people, or are we actually being influenced? That is a key question, and it's a question that we're going to have to keep asking ourselves. In this context, as I engage with people who are far from God, am I still influencing them, or are they actually influencing us? The Apostle Paul, he said that bad company corrupts good morals. Mm-hmm. Now, the point of that wasn't don't go and spend time with people who are far from God, not at all. But friends, if you only surround yourself with people who are far from God, you aren't connected in a church, you aren't reading the Bible, you're not in communion with God in prayer, guess what? That company is going to corrupt you. It is going to have a negative effect. You will be influenced. That's why I think the Apostle Paul also said that we need to abstain from every form of evil. In other words, you and I are not allowed to sin for the sake of the gospel. That is never permissible. Can never sin for the sake of the gospel. Mm-hmm. But second, Paul said, flee, run from immorality. If you are being influenced and you're going down a path that is bad for you, you need to run as fast as you can. Be praying for those people. Pray for workers, but don't go there.
Okay, let's say then somebody really truly motive is redemptive purposes. They're not being tempted, so to speak. They're not being influenced in a negative way. They're truly wanting to influence, have influence upon those people who are far from God. How would you describe that influence? What would that influence look like, in a particular case?
If we're going to influence anybody, I think that first, one thing that needs to happen, if we're going to influence people who are far from God, we need to make space for people. Now, that sounds like duh, but think about our daily routine in life. I mean, chances are on a Monday morning, you get up with just enough time to get showered, get dressed. You don't have enough time to eat. You grab your food, you eat it on the ride to work, which isn't safe, but you do it. You get to work, you work hard, you skip lunch, you get out of work. What do? You go in, if you have kids, you pick up your kids, and then you go and drop them, or you drive through McDonald's or Burger King, you take them to basketball practice, football practice, and then you go to your own softball game, you pick them up, you go home, you watch 3 hours of Netflix, and you go to bed.
Everybody over in that section.
Yeah, I know, that's a bad section.
Shaking their heads, yes.
We're all guilty of this, though, aren't we? We are, to a certain degree or another. We have filled our schedules to the brim. We have no margin for people who are far from God. So if we want to influence people, we have to actually make time and space for them. And if you look at Jesus' life, he always had margin for people. He was never bothered by people. I mean, the blind man, he calls out to Jesus and he says, "Jesus, have mercy on me." Jesus doesn't say, "I ain't got time for this dude." No, he stops. He heals him. He wasn't bothered. The lepers, they cry out to Jesus, "Jesus, have pity on us." Jesus stops. He speaks, and they're clean. They're cleansed.
Yeah, give us, though, a couple of practical ways of how to make time. I mean, so
you don't just want theory?
Yeah, I don't want theory. Give me an example, like, help me. I'm going to the grocery store or something. How could I use that as an opportunity to make time for somebody?
Absolutely. What I think we all need to do, the reality is if your schedule is like the one I just described, which again, most of ours are, you may need to cut out something. That is fair to say. You may just need to actually, cut it out. And it may be for a season or it may be forever. But I think what you're getting at is actually a better way of doing it, is it's making a 2-degree shift in our everyday activities, the things and the places we're going, right? But we're now making a slight shift so that way it has gospel intentionality and outreach focus. So the grocery store. We're all going grocery shopping, at least someone in our family or lives are. What if, instead of just going by yourself, what if in that case you actually called up a neighbor and said, "Hey, I'm going to go shopping on Thursday night. I know you got to do grocery shopping. Why don't we go together?" You can spend 2 hours together engaging in conversation and engaging in everyday outreach. The church softball league. I know there's people in this church who are on a softball league. What if you made that 2-degree shift? And next season, instead of playing on just a church league, you actually went out to a league full of just people, just everyday people, and you played there. You may invite a couple friends from church with, but you don't bring the whole team. You spread them out over lots of teams. There's a lot of practical ways. Dinner. We're all eating dinner. Hopefully you're slowing down to do it as friends or family. But what if just one night a week, you actually opened up your table and invited someone who's far from God? A coworker, a neighbor, or a person from the third place. They'll come if you invite them to your home. They have no problems with it. Free food, sign us up. But it's amazing what a 2-degree shift will do in outreach for your life.
So just think creatively about your weekly schedule and try to figure out innovative ways in which you can make space for people.
Absolutely.
Okay, what else in terms of being an influencer in the lives of people?
Second, I would say we need to be better listeners. And this is true not just for Christians, it's true for all people. But the Apostle James, he said that we need to be slow to speak and quick to listen. That's an old adage, right? God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Well, we don't do a very good job of living that out, practically speaking. When we talk to people, we want to share stories. We want to share our point of view, what we've experienced. We really do need to become better listeners. We need to be better at asking questions and engaging with people in that way. Yes, it is true that you and I as Christians, we do have the cure for the cancer for the soul. We do. We know that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. That is truth, and we know it, and we want to share it. But friends, we talked about this 3 weeks ago. Romans 3, people are not seeking after God. In other words, salvation just isn't on people's minds. They're not thinking about salvation. What are they thinking about? Their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their pains in life.
Yeah.
Imagine what you and I could do, practically speaking, if we sat down with people and just asked questions and then we shut up. We just asked questions and we listened to their lives.
You know, the first video we showed, I remember the gal saying, I never considered myself being a listener.
Right.
But that's kind of where she started.
Right.
Just listening to people. What might be a question that we could use to help us in terms of that listening? You mentioned just asking questions. Give us a sample of questions.
When I go to a grocery store or the mill or places that I go to on a regular basis, and I do go regularly to those places, again, for the relationship aspect. But what's the question we all ask people when we see them? How are you? And what's the response? Not bad, good, and then it's case closed. You're done. The conversation has ended. But what I've learned to do is just ask them one or two questions. One might be, what are you doing this weekend? What are you doing this weekend? Because here's what I've noticed with people. When you ask questions and after they give you their response, what do? They ask you the same question back. What are you doing this weekend? Well, they'll say, I'm off going to go biking, fishing, whatever it is. What are you doing this weekend? Well, I've got church. I'm really excited about hearing what's going on from Pastor Mark. And they're like, oh, okay, well, where do you go to church? First free. So what are you doing this weekend? Second question, you can just ask something like, what's the best thing that happened to you this week? It's cool. You're going to hear some really inspiring stories, and then they're going to ask you, well, what has happened in your life that's exciting? And there is a huge open door to share about what Christ has done and what God is doing in your life.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm getting it. I mean, making time for people, listening, that's a huge thing. And by the way, that's a difficult thing for me at times. I like to always think about what I'm about to say, and I interrupt a lot. But any other thoughts in terms of how can I really be more of an influencer than being influenced by others?
What'd you say? No, I heard. How to influence... I think the last thing I would encourage you to do is embrace a biblical view of hospitality. We think of hospitality as this thing that we do for friends. Okay, I'm going to have you over this weekend. We're friends, and the next weekend you can have me over. It's kind of a tit-for-tat type experience. But friends, that's not really a biblical view of hospitality. Biblical hospitality is sacrificial living. It's giving away freely your time, your talent, and your resources to strangers, to people who are far from God, or to people who will never repay you or who may never repay you. You don't know, but you just give yourself freely to them. When I was doing some reading on outreach, I came across this quote by Gary Thomas, and I got to read it with you because as I read it, I thought, man, that convicts me to the core. Gary Thomas wrote this in The Beautiful Fight. He said, perhaps one of the reasons we so feebly bear the marks of Christ's promised transforming work in our lives is that we refuse to pay such a heavy price. We want to be delivered from our troubles instead of being delivered from our sin. Listen to this. We want to be like our affluent neighbor instead of like our rich Savior. I think that's so convicting. I struggle with that. Pastors, we don't have all the answers and we don't have it all figured out. We struggle with this stuff. There are times I would much rather be like my neighbor who has all the toys and gadgets. I would much rather be entertaining people who can simply entertain me back. But friends, if we're going to do this, if we are going to be on mission to become disciple-making disciples engaged in everyday outreach, we can't do it anymore. We have to get rid of the social club living. We have to open our lives, open our hearts, give away what we have, our time, our talent, and our treasures to people who are far from God without any expectation. That's what I'd say, Mark.
Wow, that's awesome. I hope throughout this series you've been able to grasp something that we are desiring our church to be. We are really wanting to be the kind of church where everybody in our church understands what it means to live their life on mission. You know, the idea that God wants to use me and is going to use me if I just simply submit to him and follow him to fulfill the mission he has given to us. And that mission is that he wants us to introduce people to Jesus Christ, to introduce people who are far from God and show them, tell them, love them, serve them, in order that they can discover how to become close to God through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's why we've been calling this Game On, because we all are to be participants in that. And we don't want to be the kind of church that just exists for existing sake. We want to be the kind of church that exists to fulfill the mission that Jesus Christ has given us. And so that's why we've been talking about all of these things and how we can be an influence and how we can go out from these doors and influence our community by serving them and loving them and showing hospitality and doing all of these things. And that leads me, Nat, to want to get us down to the specifics, okay? Now what? We've been talking about these things, hopefully giving some practical suggestions, but right now, today, what can First Free do? What can we do to be this kind of church that is on mission and serving its community and for Lincoln and a church that models everyday outreach, you know, not corporately per se, although that's part of it, but every individual that makes up this body, man, this is what we're about. Give us some practical things.
Yeah, you know, that question, I mean, it makes me think of 1 Corinthians 3, and I have to read this to you because I think it nails our job as Christians. 1 Corinthians 3, chapter 5, verses 5 and 6. What then is Apollos and what then is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, even as the Lord gave opportunity to each. Everyone has an opportunity. Paul, I planted. Apollos watered, but God was causing the growth. You see, all we are called to do is to go scatter seeds and to water. But it's God. It's the Holy Spirit. He's the one who saves. If I could summarize those two verses in just 4 words, it'd be this. You play and God saves. That's it. Everyday gaming, right? You play and God saves. That means it doesn't matter what you like to do. Again, as long as it's not sin, go do it. Go those places that God has put you, those places you like to be and engage. If you're a runner, go run, but run in a running club. If you run, invite a neighbor to come running with you. You know, again, the grocery shopping, invite someone to come with you. It doesn't matter if you're a crocheter, if you're into painting, if you're into crafting, if you're into movies, if you're into music, if you're into home brewing, if you're into exercising, if you're, whatever it is you're into, friends, whatever that is for you, you have that everyday opportunity, but nuance it. Use it with an outreach intentionality, with that outreach mindset, and be willing and ready to share the gospel whenever God allows. But simply, it's just engaging wherever you are in those everyday outreach opportunities. You know, and I'll talk to you guys about something here in a minute, but something I thought of was this. Imagine, Mark, if every person in this church engaged in everyday outreach, right? Those everyday opportunities. If everyone just engaged with one person, and over time, if just half of those people came to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, we would have to do 600 baptisms. Can you imagine having to do over 600 baptisms?
Wow, that'd be awesome.
And then seeing this place filled to the brim. I think that'd be incredible. And I think it's possible if we will simply go and play. So playing, what can we do practically speaking today? This is what I would suggest. You know, as a church, we've been talking about how we're for Lincoln, right? We're for Lincoln, and we're for Lincoln in love. And so that's why today we're launching Summer Lovin'. Summer Lovin' is a 10-week opportunity to engage in everyday outreach. In your handouts, you have this sheet. If you have that, grab it now. And what I'd like you to do is, as I'm talking about these, look over them. and one or two or three that touch you, that are important to you, I want you to put a star by them and identify that as a thing for you.
Pastor Scott's not grabbing his.
We'll wait for you.
Okay.
He called you out, remember, not me. Not me. Awkward. Okay. So the first thing you can do that we'd offer is a block party. We've talked a lot about engaging with our neighbors. Again, that's probably the most natural, everyday place for you because you're there every single day of the week. We want to come alongside you and help you engage in everyday outreach. So we have block party bags. Out in the information booth, starting today, there are bags. Inside those bags, there's everything you need to throw a block party. There's water guns, bubbles, frisbees, invites, name tags, and so on. But for the first 25 people who grab a bag and actually register it, in the bag there's instructions on how to register your block party. If you register your block party, we're going to give you a $50 gift certificate to Super Saver. We want to partner with you. We want to come alongside you in those everyday outreach opportunities, and hosting a block party is a great way. We've done this as a family in our neighborhood. It's amazing the conversations that we've had now with people as a result of it. So the first way to engage in summer lovin' is through a block party. And if you don't know if you can do one, come and find us at the office later, call us, and we'll see if we have any kits left. So first is hosting a block party. The second is an outdoor movie night. A lot of us would love to have people over for a movie or to watch the NBA Finals or some type of event, but we can't fit 15, 20 people in our homes. Why not do it outdoors? You can get a lot of people outside. We as a church, we want to lend you some of our equipment we have. We've got outdoor movie kits ready for you on a weekly basis. Or the next 10 weeks, if you want to host an outdoor movie night, get on the website, it's on the sheet, and reserve your kit. You have a screen, a sound bar, and a projector, and invites. It's taken care of for you. My wife and I and our kids, we do that. The first time we hosted an outdoor movie night, we had like 6 people. It was a success. The second time we did it, we had maybe 12 or 13, and the last time we did it, we had over 25 people. They will just show up to be together and hang out and come around a movie. And from that event, we've had meaningful conversations, and I've been able to share the gospel with people who are far from God. So hosting a block party, second, hosting an outdoor movie night, and the third one is one we can all do. In fact, I would hope we all would do it over the next 10 weeks and beyond, but it's simply having what we call a D48. That stands for Dinner for 8. Imagine, what if you were to partner with another person or another couple or another family from our church? We want you to just call up someone that you know or want to know better from our church and invite someone who's far from God. Each person, each couple invites somebody, and you just have dinner. Again, you're doing the things you're going to do anyway, but now you're nuancing it. You're having a 2-degree shift, and you're sharing that time with another person. Have a barbecue, a grill. You don't even have to go to your house. If your house isn't big enough or your apartment's not big enough, grab somebody and go and grab dinner at a pizza place and then go see a movie or go to a baseball game. But we encourage you, we're going to do it, is having at least a D48, partnering with someone in the church and then going out and inviting people in to experience that with you. And then, of course, we encourage you, no matter what you do and whatever area that you engage in outreach, the neighborhood, the workplace, or the third place, we encourage you, please share your stories. We want to see what's happening. Share your pictures on social media and hashtag it for Lincoln. And please share the stories on that For Lincoln map. That's out there for a purpose. We want to hear how God is working through you as you go and you scatter, as you water, and as you play.
You know, our time is gone. I just want to close with one word: imagine. Imagine being used by God to fulfill his mission. Go, therefore, into all the world and make disciples. Go just means to your neighborhood, to your workplace, to your school, to your sphere of influence. Imagine this summer loving on people at those places. Watching a movie, somebody who's far from God, then maybe talking about it. Taking somebody else and saying, let's connect with some people who are far from God and let's have a dinner. See where the conversation would leave us, or lead us. Just imagine a block party and getting to know your neighbors better. Imagine in time, as you build those relationships, these empty seats that you see representing people who have been touched by the ministry of your life. Imagine people far from God having the opportunity to know what it means to be close to God through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ because of you.